And the world must hear our voices. The world must hear our songs. The world must hear the truth as we keep marching on. We never can rest silent beneath the rocket's roar. We must sing our songs of freedom for now and evermore.
Of Change, a project of Community Shares. Community Shares raises money and awareness for Tennessee's social change nonprofits. This show seeks to inform you about the organizations that are our member groups. My name is Shelley Wascom, and I'm your host, and I'm very happy to have here today Katherine Moore, who is with the Disability Resource Center. Welcome, Katherine. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Shelley. I'm pleased to be here.
So, just so in case people don't know, could you tell us a little bit about the Disability Resource Center?
The Disability Resource Center is a nonprofit, non-residential agency, and we help people with disabilities, or we assist people with disabilities to live independent lives in their community, as independent as possible. We have 5 core services. We have peer support, information and referral, advocacy, independent living skills, and youth and transition programs.
Wow, that's a lot.
And everything's free.
Oh, yeah. So, you know what, let's say, I'm not even sure they have this to put on the screen, but if a person was interested in getting assistance, what would they do?
They could just call the Disability Resource Center at 865-637-3666, or they could just come by. They don't have to have a referral or anything.
And you're located on East Hill?
900 East Hill Avenue.
That's great. So y'all do a lot of things, and we've talked about some of them before,
right.
Especially I know the work that you do with young people,
right.
to help them as they are leaving high school usually, and
right.
to become more independent. And there's some really great programs out there. And I know today we wanted to talk a little bit about even some of the myths that people have, or some of the questions that have come up from people about people with disabilities. Let's start with that. I mean, I feel this is a question I get asked a lot.
Okay.
Because people will say the disabled or disabled people, and I know that in the disability community, well, why don't you explain how you like people
That's
to say?
Okay. We want people first language because we're people first. We're a person with a disability. So we are a person, so we call it people first language. The word handicapped is a no-no. That's really not an accepted term, only because a lot of people have such a stereotype with that word. Years ago, of a blind person with a cap in their hand on the street, begging for money, or, something like that. And so we're trying to get that picture away from people's minds, and disability is a much more positive picture of a person. So you wouldn't say confined to a wheelchair, because the wheelchair gives a person freedom. So you would just say someone who uses a wheelchair, or you can even say a wheelchair user, that's okay. But they're not confined or bound to a wheelchair, because that wheelchair gives them freedom.
Right, that makes absolute sense. Well, I wanted to ask, because one of the things you say y'all do is to help people to live as independently as possible.
Right.
I feel like that is a myth that people have, is that if you have any kind of disability that you can't live independently.
Right.
So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, a lot of people think that people who have any type of disability need to live in a nursing home or a group home, or have a personal attendant at all times, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that all disabilities don't require that. As a matter of fact, very, very, very few require that. There's all kinds of community services. If you do need assistance from a personal attendant, there's free services for that. But most of the time, it's the attitudinal barriers that keep people with disabilities from living as independently as they can.
Right. Yeah. And an interesting thing, we had a guy on our board for years, and he did have a live-in attendant. But with that attendant, he was able to live alone. I mean, not alone,
Right.
because the attendant lived there, but he lived in his own home.
Right.
He worked a job, a
Right.
full-time job
Right.
for the state, and wouldn't have been able to do that because he was a
Right.
quadriplegic. He
Right.
needed somebody to help him get dressed and
Of
stuff.
course.
But that was an eye-opener for me about you know, why attendance can be such an important
Right.
service. With them, he had a full independent life.
Exactly.
And the person wasn't with him all the time.
Right.
You know, without him, he would have had to be in a nursing home or somewhere.
He would have.
You know.
Yes, he would have. And that personal attendant worked for him. He was his employee. So it's not like just because he did help him get dressed or helped him transfer from the bed to the chair or whatever he needed him to do, the personal attendant was still his employee, and the person with the disability is the employer.
Right.
Instead of people having the myth that the caregiver has to make all the decisions for that person.
That's right. That's right. And in fact, an interesting thing Paul used to say, because he needed to be fed. And he would laugh and say that people would often not feed him what they didn't like.
What they didn't like.
He would order something and he would say, you know, why aren't you giving me any peas?
Yes.
And the person would say, well, I don't like peas. And he said, well, I like peas.
I like peas.
That's why I ordered them. And it hit me. I mean, that was just another time of sort of forgetting the role of saying what all he needs is for you to help him eat. He doesn't need you to decide what he's going to eat.
Right. He can make his own choices,
Right.
yes. And it sounds as if he was very educated and could work and take care of himself as far as deciding what is and is not best for him.
Right.
Where he wants to live, what he wants to do, all those things.
And that leads us into another myth about working. You know, a lot of people think that people with disabilities can't work.
Right. And people with disabilities do work and want to work. It is true that I believe we are the minority that has less people working than other minorities because, for one thing, people are afraid of what we might, quote, need, what we can or can't do. Can we even get to work? Can we even find our way around the building? Can we make decisions? All kinds of things like that. Or is it going to be expensive to hire someone with a disability? Will our health insurance go up? That's not true. The health insurance will not go up. Lots of times, accessibility for a person or just empowering a person to do the job could be something as simple as maybe they need a Velcro strap to assist in holding a pencil, or maybe they just need their desk up a little higher. We have an employee who is a wheelchair user, and we have her desk lifted up on 2x4s, you know, just under her desk so she can wheel under there. We don't have any real expensive accommodation for her, and she's fine. So there's all kinds of things you can do that don't cost anything that can assist the person to do the job. And generally, people with disabilities, we are so thankful that we are given the opportunity to be employed and show what we can do and what we can contribute. We are very loyal employees. We are very dependable employees, and we work very hard.
Yes, absolutely. Well, here's another. I have a sheet with some myths on it, and here was one. It says that people who are blind develop a sixth sense. So can you talk about that?
That's funny. I get that all the time. I bet you can hear really well. And actually, I don't hear very well. And that has nothing to do with my blindness. But we are trained to listen for the right things. For example, if I go into a building, I'm a guide dog user, so if I go into the building, I can either tell my dog to find the elevator or find the escalator. However, I have to direct my dog to that object. So I have to go in and I'll listen for the ping of the elevator doors, or I'll listen for the roar of an escalator, or if I'm trying to find a cashier or a counter, I'll listen to where I can hear if people are talking to a staff person, that kind of thing. So you're trained what to listen for. I remember when I lost my sight, I went to Morristown, and my mobility instructor took me to a mall after I had had quite a bit of mobility training, and he had me walk through the mall, and I had to tell him when I got to the opening of a store, I had to tell him what kind of store it was, what they sold in there. I had to go in there and find my way out and different things. And of course, I could not have done that before. When you first lose your sight, it's not like a movie. All of a sudden, your senses just, it's not like that at all. And actually, they don't improve without training. You have to be trained to do that.
Well, and it also makes sense that you learn what to listen for if you think about that you often hear your own name. You know, if you're in a crowded area, you will hear your own name even though you don't hear anything else.
Yeah, that's a real good example. Yeah.
Right. We do train ourselves. There's another thing on here, and we have about 4 minutes left. So, about how people what people should tell their children about interacting with people with disabilities.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. If a child seems to stare at somebody, or lots of times I'll get, "Mom, there's a dog in here," and the parent will go, "Shh." But I don't want them to hush the child. I want them to explain to the child what the dog is, that I am blind. I'm not ashamed of being blind. I'm not ashamed of having a guide dog. I'm very proud of my guide dog. And lots of times I'll try and get up to that child and say, "Yes, this is a guide dog. Would you like to know about him and what he does for me?" and that kind of thing. And lots of times, if they allow the children to ask the person questions, that's what we love. We love for the kids to ask us questions, because we never want them scared or frightened, or we want them to understand that should this happen to them, it's okay. Their life still goes on. It may take a different journey, but the journey is just as wonderful as if they took the one they thought they were going to have.
Absolutely. That makes absolute sense. And I feel like I know that I met a guy a few years ago, and he was talking about why they're trying to create more playgrounds that are accessible.
Right.
And he was saying, if kids can start playing together and understand that they can all play together, it takes away so much of the differences and just says we're all different. I mean, kids have all different skills and abilities, but they can sort of learn that there's nothing to be afraid of. It's just one difference. You might have a different skin color. You might have different hair color. You have different abilities. Some kids are real athletic. Some are not. So I think it is important to work with your kids. But I know that I'm sure people worry that they don't want to embarrass somebody.
Right. That's mainly what people are concerned about. They just don't want to be embarrassed. I mean, they don't want their child to embarrass somebody, but we're not embarrassed. So it's okay to have your child, even comment, it's okay. And you can bring your child up to us and talk to us. And I will say, if you do that and the person with the disability is rude, it's not because they have the disability, they're just a rude person.
Right. But just like everybody, you're going to probably meet some rude people. I mean. But, like anybody, a person could be very busy. I mean, sometimes it's good to talk to a person, and sometimes they might be like, well, you know what, I'm on my way here.
Right. And I would love to talk to you, but, I just can't right now. And that's okay. I mean, that's okay, too.
Yeah.
So, you can say, oh, I'm sorry, or, whatever, but that's okay. I would still rather that somebody come up to me with their child or, something like that than just hush the child as if it's something embarrassing or something you just don't comment on, because 1 out of 5 people have a disability now. So that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we just want children to be comfortable around others.
Yeah. We have a minute left. I want to make sure we hit on this. Is there anything from that dRC has upcoming that you want to make sure that we share?
Oh, we do. We have on October 12th, we have our Be a Friend Festival again, and that's an anti-bullying festival. It will be at the Ashley Nicole Dream Playground. Everything is free, including the lunch, and we have all kinds of activities and things to represent different cultures and religions, race, ethnicities, just economic statuses, gender, just to combat bullying. It's an anti-bullying festival, and we want kids to learn to accept each other and realize that we're all so much the same, just as disabilities.
That's the same weekend as fall break again?
Yes, that's fall break, and we have it
then. So it gives people something to do.
Exactly, yeah. That's why we have it. It's in the daytime from 11 to 3.
That's great. We are actually out of time, so I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Shelley.
And if folks have how to contact you if they need to, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
And the world must hear our voices. The world must hear our songs. The world must hear the truth as we keep marching on. We never can rest silent beneath the rocket's roar. We must sing our songs of freedom for now and evermore.